What's up, guys? So actually right now I am not where I usually live. During the October China National Week, the Golden Week, I go back to my wife's hometown and we spend about a week to 10 days away from Shenzhen. Because of this, I don't have access to a gym. There are gyms here, but it's sort of not that big of a city. Well, it has 4 million people, but it's small by Chinese standards, I guess. So basically, I don't have access to a gym. I know this in advance. I know exactly when I will be leaving and when I will be coming back. So the week before, or even the 2 weeks before that I have to leave, I use this opportunity to purposefully overtrain. Now, this isn't quite actual overtraining. Overtraining is actually typically done over the course of many, many months, and it is typically actually seen in more endurance athletes. So runners, rowers, crossfitters, that kind of thing. And this is a long-term discrepancy, a difference between your training and your recovery. So if you are doing over the course of 3 months or 6 months, far more work than you can recover from, and you basically run yourself into the ground or you swim yourself into the water, and you don't recover well because you were just doing too much on a very long-term basis. It is a very hormonally disrupted state, and this can't really happen in 1 to 2 weeks. In 1 to 2 weeks, you can become what is called overreached. So when you're overreached, you're sort of getting to be overtrained, but you're not quite overtrained yet. There can be actually benefits of overreaching. Overtraining, on the other hand, is far worse and I think should always be avoided. Most people, to be perfectly honest, they cannot overtrain because they don't have the balls to actually get overtrained. They'll get tired, they'll get fatigued, they'll lose motivation, and they will stop training, and then they will suddenly go from overreached to back to normal. To get to overtrained, you need to really push yourself way too hard, way too long over the course of several months, and then get to a very sort of stagnant, unresponsive, unstimulated state where you cannot progress. So why even overreach at all? Why bother doing this if I'm taking a break anyway? Why not just do my normal schedule up until then and then take a break? Well, I think there are a few advantages to doing this type of protocol, which I will detail in a little bit. So first, something called satellite cells. Now, these are very, very important, and they react towards a lot of training, a lot of volume. They can actually react to muscle damage. So if you do a lot of training far beyond what you normally do, these satellite cells, which are surrounding the muscle, that's why they're called satellite cells, because they are sort of satelliting around the actual muscle fiber, they can be donated into the muscle, these new nuclei. These new nuclei can actually allow for more muscle growth. So they are the limiting factor when it comes to muscle growth, and they can only really be activated at a certain point by large amounts of training. Low volume training can work for a certain point, but to get to a next level, in a lot of cases, I've found an epic workout can help. But this epic workout, or these epic time periods of working out, they can't be done every single week because they generate a lot of fatigue. If you get injured, or if you get hurt, or if you are just in an overly fatigued state, you have to take time off, and it's not good for progress. But if you know you're going to have to take time off anyway, you might as well do this type of thing. And one of the great things about this type of protocol is that it teaches you how much volume you can get away with. So I see a lot of people, they are afraid of volume. They take a very low volume approach, which can work sometimes for some people. I've done videos on them before, and I think they can be good. However, they're definitely not for everyone, and I think a lot of people in the gym are absolutely undertrained. They're afraid of doing too much. They're afraid of quote-unquote overtraining. And for the average person, overtraining is absolutely not a concern. And so really attacking the weights for a week or even 2 weeks in a short phase, and you know you have that recovery time after, it can really teach you how to blast through fatigue and how to work your ass off. Because if it's one thing that most people are lacking, it's the ability to put in the work. And if you go from doing 40, 50, 60 sets all to failure or close to failure in a single workout, and then later you go back to doing something more normal, it feels a lot easier. After doing this type of insane, ridiculous volume, training normally is pretty damn easy. And you shouldn't need to train super hard all the time, but you should also shift the goalposts. What I see from a lot of people is they think they train hard, and they slowly and slowly and slowly get more and more lazy over time. So basically, they go from really working hard, and their definition of hard work changes over time, and it gets easier and easier and easier. This is where epic workouts can actually help, or epic weeks, just because they really put things in perspective and show how much you can handle and how much you can survive. It's not really manageable all of the time, and I don't advocate it all of the time, but once or twice a year, I think this is a really, really good way to blast through plateaus. You have that recovery time after, and so why not? There's very little drawback, and I think for a lot of people, this can be a good experience. So are there any drawbacks to this type of thing? Yes, potentially. The main thing is to not get injured. If you get, maybe achy elbows or achy knees or like a little bit of this beaten up feeling in your joints, that's pretty normal actually. That's not something that is unheard of. And if you're increasing your volume by a lot, honestly, your joints, they could hurt a little bit. You need to learn how to differentiate this type of just systemic stress towards an actual injury. An actual injury is not what you want to have. You should always avoid injury. You can learn from injuries, but I would say most of the time, if not all the time, you should avoid injuries because they're not going to be a good situation and they're going to take longer to recover. So if you have like a week and a half off later and you really get a knee injury or a hip injury or a shoulder or an elbow or something, it's going to take longer than that time to recover, so it's not really worth getting. So if your technique tends to degrade over time, I would say this is definitely not a good option. If you tend to get really rounded over on deadlifts when you're fatigued, or if you tend to have your knees cave in when you squat, or your elbows flare out in the bench press, or any other technique error when you get fatigued, I think this is probably not a good option because you will definitely be fatigued. If you're a beginner, this probably isn't necessary. In fact, it's definitely not necessary, and it's not even really advisable. If you've been training less than about 3 years, don't even bother with this. Just train normally, progress well, focus on the basic movements, get in good sleep, good nutrition, de-stress, just focus on the basics. Going into some kind of hardcore protocol is not really advisable, nor is it really necessary. Just, if you're a beginner, you should already be sensitive to training, and thus you can progress pretty well. But if you're a little bit more advanced, if you have a little bit more time under the bar, I think this can be a good option, just because you're going to have that recovery time anyway, so you might as well go for it. So how much should you increase your volume by? I would say anywhere from maybe 50% up to double would be a good starting point, assuming you were already training pretty hard before. Now, this is quite a bit, and you should feel it. You should feel the fatigue. You should feel not 100%. It might be tougher to warm up. You might feel, again, a little bit of aches and pains in your joints. You might feel soreness in your muscles, and embrace it. It's part of the process, and you're going to have that juicy, sweet, succulent recovery time afterwards, so you might as well push it and work your ass off in the meantime. Now, there's also some advantages of this downtime, of this time off. As you are taking time off, you actually re-sensitize to training. So how sensitive you are to training is very, very important. If you are always training with high volume, eventually you are no longer sensitive to that high volume, and it's very, very easy to stagnate. This is why I recommend cycling your training. So having some periods of low volume, moderate volume, high volume, and then having some time completely off. You might seem like you're going backwards, you might seem like you're losing muscle, or you don't look as good, or you don't have a pump. Not really, okay? You can go 2-3 weeks maybe even up to 4 weeks, and lose very, very minimal muscle. You'll feel flat, you'll have less glycogen, you won't have a pump, but you're not actually losing muscle. Plus, when you return to training, you can actually progress a lot more quickly. I saw this a lot of the time with quarantine. People lost muscle, they got smaller over the course of 2, 3, 4 months without the gym. Then when they then when they returned to the gym, they actually made excellent progress. They progressed really quickly, faster than they expected, back to and beyond their previous levels of muscle and strength. Plus, I think this type of longer-term recovery is going to be better than this short-term day-off type of recovery. If you're training really hard 6 days a week and you take 1 day off, honestly, often that isn't enough. You're not getting the same deeper recovery, especially in terms of the joints and connective tissue, compared to this longer week, 10 days, or even 2 weeks off recovery. One interesting thing is that often your joints will actually feel worse when you don't lift. So if you take a week off, on day 2 or day 3 or day 4, you might actually feel really terrible. And this is because you're not moving as much, you're not getting as much blood into the muscle, you're not getting synovial fluid and everything moving around. But I think for long-term recovery, this is definitely not a bad thing. Most professional athletes, they take a large amount of time off per year. They're not in the gym 365 days a year, okay? They're not even in the gym 52 weeks a year. They take, several months off a lot of the time. And this is usually 1 to 2 times per year and 1 to 4 weeks off per time. This doesn't hurt their progress in a lot of ways. In fact, due to this re-sensitization, it can actually help your long-term progress. I see so many people, a lot of them who aren't very advanced, think that they have to train the entire year. They have to train all the time or they won't progress, and if they take a week off, oh my god, they're going to lose muscle. No, you're not going to lose muscle, and in fact, for long term, you'll probably gain more muscle due to this regaining phenomenon. Furthermore, if you set it up in this way, where you're doing this overreaching phase before the time off, you could, hypothetically, theoretically, donate those satellite cells into the muscle, and next time when you are retraining, you can reach a new level of muscularity. I think this is a better way to do it, and honestly, it's better for your mental health as well. I used to train every day. I would never miss a day. I had this sort of gung-ho, over-the-top, super dedicated, driven mentality until I realized that it was actually getting in my way. It was not healthy. I was actually addicted to training, and I was worse off because I had this mentality. A lot of people, I see this too, they want to be driven, they want to be motivated, they want to seem like they are super dedicated to something, and yet actually they don't have the intelligence, the wisdom to step back and realize that this might not be optimal for progress. They would actually be better off chilling the fuck out, relaxing, and being able mentally to take a week or 2 off once or twice per year. It's not going to hurt your gains, and in fact, due to what I've said before, it probably will actually help your gains. Finally, whether it is Chinese National Day or Chinese Spring Festival or Christmas or Kwanzaa or any other holiday, I think this is a time where you shouldn't be training every day. You should spend it with friends, with family, and just relax. Not be that guy or that girl who has to go to the gym, who has to train every day. And honestly, one good thing about the quarantine, I think it's shown that you don't really need to train every day, and that it's good to sometimes have a detox from the gym. Alright, that is all for today. Make sure to like, subscribe, notifications on, and I will see you in that next video. Peace!
Cool outro to get you to watch a video, to get you to watch a video. Do it, bro. You know you want to.